There we go. What's up, team? Welcome to the video. We're going to talk about bulking, the psychology of bulking, how fast of results you can expect to see when bulking. Bulking being a bro term for a phase of training where you're intentionally trying to build muscle as your primary goal, which generally constitutes a higher load of total training volume. So weightlifting, technically you can bulk on body weight work as well, albeit less effective, and a surplus of calories. So eating more calories than you burn each day. Caveat, if you're brand new to weightlifting, you can add muscle and lose fat at the same time. Outside of that, if you're a non-drug user, meaning steroids, it's called recomposition, adding muscle, losing fat at the same time. It's very, very hard to do. It's ineffective. I don't recommend it. So with that being said, let's talk, because so many people reach out to me early in the first muscle gain phase they ever attempt in their life and are very frustrated, which I completely understand. When you think of like, I'm gonna bulk, you think, I'm gonna start lifting, eating more, and start seeing results. The third piece of that, the seeing results, doesn't happen in a muscle gain phase like it does with fat loss. Visible results are incredibly slow, and sometimes you actually look worse before you look better. And the reason for that is when you're leaner, you can see more muscle, you have more definition, you have separation between biceps and triceps, chest, shoulders. Like, the leaner you are, the better you're gonna look shirtless. When you start a bulk, and part of the reason that you look worse, other than you're gonna add some body fat along with the muscle, is that it takes a long time to add muscle. If you Google around, take the smartest people, compile the best studies, you're gonna get a little chart that says 20 to 25 pounds of muscle is expected in your first year of strength training if you do everything optimally, by the way. Like 25 pounds in a year of muscle for a beginner would be really, really good. And most people's lives just aren't conducive to doing something optimally for a year, but we'll still use these. 20 to 25 pounds in the first year, 10 to 12 pounds in the second year, 5 pounds in the third year, 2 to 3 pounds, and then 1 to 2 pounds a year after that. So in your first 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks of a muscle gain phase, it would be really, really good if you gained 5 pounds of muscle in 2 months, 3 months. It'd be really, really good if you gained 5 pounds of muscle in 3 months. You're not gonna see 5 pounds of muscle on your frame in 3 months. Not only that, it's not gonna be 5 pounds of pure muscle, depending on the size of your calorie surplus, your genetics, whether you're doing a little bit of cardio, which can improve insulin sensitivity and decrease fat gain. So let you gain a little bit less body fat relative to how much muscle you're gaining. Like, depending on how optimal those factors are, maybe you only add 1 to 2 pounds of body fat in that amount of time. Maybe you add 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds of body fat in that amount of time. But when you add, call it 5 pounds of muscle and 5 pounds of fat, you're gonna look worse shirtless. And not only on the permanent body comp side of things, which means the muscle and fat you have gained, but on the temporary body comp side of things, meaning when you go, if all you've ever done is try to cut, like me, from age 14 to 24, just always wanted to be diced out of my mind. When you go from that place, and diced can be anything depending on where you are, but when you go from trying to be lean and maybe being kind of lean to increasing your calories into a surplus, you know what happens? You feel bloated, you feel uncomfortable, you feel like, I'm not used to having this much food in my stomach on a consistent basis, which is gonna lead to you feeling bigger and looking worse in the mirror. When you're carb depleted, dehydrated, your stomach and abs, like muscles, don't look better carb depleted, but you do look leaner carb depleted than when carbed up. And add to that like food in your digestive tract, like increased carb storage, increased water storage in your body, so you're gonna look less lean right away when you start bulking, just from the uptick in calories. So this like, if I was talking to a client of mine who emailed me with this concern, my advice would be, look, I did a bad job of laying expectations for how this is gonna go. But for muscle gain, it just takes time. Like, it takes time, and when I say time, I mean 6, 8, 12 months of real work and no noticeable day-to-day or week-to-week progress. Strength, yes, like strength is gonna go up depending on your programming, depending on a number of factors, but muscle gain, it's so tedious. Over time, you'll look back and you'll say, hey, a year ago, like, my arms didn't fit like this in this shirt or whatever the body part. But in those first couple months, visible changes, even though you are building muscle, visible changes aren't happening. I have a few specific questions that I want to address. Hang out here, I just want to get them right. Waist measurements. So is it expected that I feel my gut is remaining rounder than it did when I was in a fat loss phase? Is this due to increased carbohydrates, increased calorie intake in general? If it's not expected, is there anything else you should suggest? Anything you'd suggest I try? It is due to both, mainly the calories, but both the increased calories and increased carbohydrates. And like, take waist measurements on yourself, people. Because just because you feel less defined in this area doesn't necessarily mean you're bigger in this area. And taking waist measurements, average waist measurements are a better indicator of fat gain and fat loss than the scale is in a 2 to 4 week window at least. Intermittent fasting. Would you recommend this? I've heard this before on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is a fantastic podcast. I'm a huge, massive Joe Rogan fan for everything except when he talks about fitness, because then it's just like, and fight training and things like that, great, but kettlebells and super low carb and weird high, lots of saturated fats, just like, yes, it works, but it's not as efficient as other things you could be doing. But basically, intermittent fasting, heard on the Rogan podcast, would you recommend this? Would it be a good way to help my body burn fat tissue rather than muscle? Intermittent fasting is a fantastic meal timing strategy to help make your life more enjoyable when dieting. When in a calorie deficit, specifically if you're someone who isn't a huge breakfast fan, the 16-8, the Martin Burkhan, which is the Gray O'Gallagher, which is the, like, what I have a lot of clients doing myself, which I do myself, which many of you do, pushing breakfast back in the day, bigger meals later on, when like social settings are happening, when a lot of people are hungrier in the evening, caffeine in the morning. I'm not gonna beat the dead horse there, but intermittent fasting is a great tool to make your life easier when losing body fat. There isn't magical recomp to it. I know if you're intermediate plus and you follow Burkhan's intermittent fasting to a T, which means fasted RPT style training right before you break your feeding window, and then loading calories post, carb cycling, calorie cycling between training days and rest days, maybe like a little bit, but the real merit of intermittent fasting is meal timing strategy, make your life better while being pretty close on calories and macros, see progress, enjoy life. For muscle gain, unless you love that meal timing strategy, for lifestyle and for bigger meals, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. One, we're giving away a little bit of progress by limiting total muscle protein synthesis, by confining our meals into a 6 or 8 hour window rather than over 14 hours. Like, we're losing a little MPS, which is important, which is going to increase when you dose protein. So if you have some protein around the time when you wake up, and then you don't go longer than 4 or 5 hours without having a little protein, 25 grams, and then have some protein before bed, that's gonna be marginally beneficial for muscle gain. So I don't recommend intermittent fasting for someone whose primary goal is muscle gain. and I don't love recommended recomposition for most people. Therefore, I don't like intermittent fasting if your goal is muscle gain. What else? We talked about rate of expectations for muscle gain. We talked about, like, you guys are smart. You just know when you see someone with the enormous shoulders and, like, you know, 5'10", walking around at 225 pounds on the scale and shredded out of their mind, and they did this form of this, or they did this kind of bulk, or that, like, they're using steroids. That's what's happening. If you Google Brad Pylon FFMI, or if you just Google FFMI, you should get some good, like, how much muscle can I actually build naturally, approximately type of content. I'm not gonna make any of that type of content here, just because of the crowd that it attracts. But yeah, check that out for, like, total muscle gain, or like how much muscle you can gain over the course of your life. Yeah, that's about it. Drop questions below in the comments. Leave me a comment anyway if you're watching the video. If you like the video, hit the like button. I didn't script this, and I was going to, so if I left anything out, I'll be like hardcore Q&A in the comments on this video specifically, because I want to cover this, and I want people to feel good about what to expect when trying to add muscle to your frame in a bulk. Thank you guys for watching. See you soon.